Hello and welcome to Outreach 301, which covers outreach engagement, exiting a client from outreach, and AZ client notes. I am your trainer, HMIS System Lead Trisha Cano. In this session, I will be demonstrating how to create an engagement date through interims, when and how to create an exit on an outreach client, and how to document notes on the client record in AZ client notes if applicable. The HUD definition of engagement, or an engagement date, is the date on which an interactive client relationship results in a deliberate client assessment or beginning of a case plan. Please note that if you have any questions, feel free to contact us at the HMIS Help Desk via email at hmissupport@cir.org or by phone or text at 602-908-3605. Thank you, and let's get started. If you remember, during Outreach 300 class, we covered initial contact, subsequent contacts, and how to record services. So in today's session, we will pick up where we left off with that fictitious client and create an engagement date, complete the universal engagement assessment questions, and then eventually exit our client when they become housed. So once you log into HMIS, get into Enter Data As mode in the upper right-hand corner if applicable, and it usually is for your outreach workers. So I'm going to get into Outreach to H3 Chandler Outreach, just like during last session. And then determine again if you need to get into Backdate mode. Did the interaction you are about to record happen today? If not, use Backdate. For training purposes today, we're going to backdate to April 2nd, 2015, because that's just a few weeks after our last contact during our training that we had did before. And that was our last contact with that client was on 3/15. So it's a few weeks later, and I'm going to demonstrate what you do when a client becomes engaged. Look up your client in the system by clicking on the Client Point module on the left and searching for them. So our client was Client Outreach, or you could use their HMIS ID number if you knew it. Do a search, find your client in the system. I noted it's client 2161, so that's the one I'm going to use today. And we've become engaged. That means we have a deliberate request for assistance. And so at this point, we're going to collect all the data we can, and we're going to fill in all the data elements on this client's record. So the first thing I would probably do before I get into actually creating the interim is I need to update the Social Security number and the U.S. military veteran question. And those two items are updated right here on the client record, not within the entry exit. So I'm going to edit the client record by clicking this pencil icon to the left of the header. And I'm going to fill in the client's Social Security number and change this to the full Social Security number has been reported now. And I'm going to document whether the client is a U.S. military veteran or not. And in this case today, I'm going to say no, they are not a U.S. military veteran, and click Save. Now, we're going to create an interim update to document the engagement. Click on the Entry Exit tab of the client's record. Locate the line of entry into your outreach project. Remember, our initial contact was on 3/1, and we recorded 2 more subsequent contacts since that day. I'm going to create another interim review on 4/2/2015 by clicking the interim review icon and opening up my pop-up. And I'm going to add another interim review, and the review type is going to be Update on 4/2. Click Save and Continue. Now please note, you can record one last contact on the same day as your engagement. If you remember from the previous training in Outreach 300, you can record as many contacts as you want. Every interaction with the client should be recorded via contact on this outreach subassessment until the date of engagement. Once you have a date of engagement, no more contacts are recorded, but you can record one final one on the same day as the engagement. So that's what I'm going to do first. The Outreach Universal Contact Assessment opens by default, and I'm going to go to my Outreach Subassessment, and I'm going to add one last contact. And it's going to be today, 4/2/2015, placement for habitation, and save. That is the last contact I will ever record on this client because now they have become engaged. The next step is I'm going to scroll up to the Select an Assessment area of this window, and I'm going to choose the Outreach Universal Engagement Assessment. Click on it to make it active. You'll notice once the Outreach Universal Engagement Assessment opens, the very first item is to record the date of engagement. This is the assessment that is done once a client is engaged. So I'm going to put in, again, today's date, 4/2/2015, is the date that my client became engaged, or we are going to create a deliberate case plan. The universal data elements are already filled in because we covered this in Outreach 300 class, but if they were not completely filled in yet, this is the time when you would go ahead and fill in the rest of the answers that you may not have gathered yet. Please keep in mind that once your client becomes engaged, all of your local data quality standards apply to outreach teams. So you must fill in and answer every question to the best of your ability. So I'm not going to go over these again, but here's your universal data elements, which we already filled out. Now, because the client is engaged, we must complete the engagement data elements or program data elements. And these are additional elements such as income, non-cash benefits, health insurance, disabilities, education, domestic violence, and if you so choose, veteran information. So let's start with total monthly income. Just scrolling to my area there. If the client reports that they have no income at all, record the total monthly income text field as 0. If they did have some sort of income, let's say they were making $300 a month selling cans, you could put 300 in there. If they were getting disability payments of $720 a month, you can put that in there. This number can be rounded to the nearest number. You don't have to use a decimal point here. But for training today, I'm going to say that the client does not have any income yet. So my income from any source would be no. If I did have income here, my income source would be yes. Now I need to fill in and tell the system what sources of income the client has, yes or no. It is a requirement of HUD now that you ask the client about every income source. Do you receive this or do you receive that? And you don't just blanket say, do you have an income, yes or no, and go with it. So to document that you completed the assessment correctly and you asked them about every source of income there is, you use this HUD verification link on the right-hand side. Notice these HUD verification links are red right now. This means they are not complete. And our goal by the time we finish this assessment is that every HUD verification will be green. This is a requirement of HUD and the other federal partners. And a lot of outreach teams are funded by the federal partner of ESG. So I'm going to click on HUD verification. And when I do this, a pop-up window opens and it lists every source of income that HUD is acknowledging at this time. So you would ask your client, do they receive alimony or spousal support? Yes or no. Do they receive child support? Yes or no. Do they receive an earned income of some kind? Yes or no, etc. So that you document in the system that you truly asked about every type. Now, once you've asked it, there's a shortcut so you don't have to make so many clicks. Up here at the top, you can select a receiving income source for all values at the same time. So if I click the No Radio button, the system automatically fills in every income source as no. And I'm going to leave it at this because I'm saying that this particular client does not have any income coming in at this time. If they did have an income, I could still click no and make everything no, but then find the income on the list that they are receiving, let's say SSDI, and I could click yes and fill in the amount. Once you're done, click Save and Exit. Now, in the monthly income sub-assessment, every income source, which is 15 at this time, is listed, and it says no. This documents that you asked the client and they said no, they are not receiving it. And look, my HUD verification turned green, which is exactly what I want. If you ever wanted to go back and look at these without having to page over, there's a nice little shortcut right next to the monthly income header. Click on this little magnifying glass and it opens up every source at once. And I can just close that. Now let's go on to the next data element, which is non-cash benefit from any source. Are they receiving any non-cash benefits? Yes or no? In this case, for training, I'm going to demonstrate and say yes, they are receiving a non-cash benefit. And again, I'm going to use my HUD verification link because I want this red to turn green. Click on HUD verification. A pop-up window opens with all the non-cash benefit types that HUD acknowledges. I'm going to use my shortcut again of saying no to everything, but I'm going to find the item on the list that they do have, and they can have more than one. But in this case, I'm going to say my client is receiving food stamps. So I will change food stamps to a yes, leave everything else as no, and save and exit. The next element is, are they covered by any sort of health insurance? Yes or no. And I'm going to say that yes, actually I said no, but I'm going to say yes, they're covered by Medicaid. Medicaid in Arizona is access. So if a client tells you they're on access, that's the same thing as Medicaid in HMIS. I'm going to click my HUD verification. It's going to list every insurance type. State health insurance for adults is not Medicaid. Those are two different things. At this time, the state of Arizona does not offer this option. Other states around America do, but we do not here in Arizona. So if someone says they have like state health insurance, it means they mean Medicaid. So I'm going to use my shortcut and say no to everything, and then change the one that they are receiving to a yes. Then save and exit. And then finally, we have disability types. So if the client reported up at the top under Universal Data Elements that they have a disability of long duration and our client did, then now you must document what is their disability type. Actually, even if you said no, you still need to document no to every type. So we're going to click on HUD verification. It's going to list the 7 disability types. I'm going to say no to everything and then go back and change the type that my client does have to a yes, and they can have more than one. In this case, I'm just going to say they have a physical disability. So I'm going to say yes to physical disability, and whoa, what happened? As soon as you say yes to a data element that needs additional information, and that would be either income or disability type, then a pop-up opens so you can complete that additional information. So since I'm saying that my client has a physical disability, it needs more information. Is it expected to be of long and continued duration? Yes. Is the disability severity on file? Like, do you have documentation in the client record? Yes, you shouldn't be recording a disability unless you have documentation on record. The exception is that if you, as a case manager, you observe that the client does have a disability, you're quite sure that they do, but the client doesn't have any documentation, you can go ahead and document it, yes, but then you must obtain that written documentation for the file within 45 days. Are they currently receiving treatment? Yes or no? And is it going to be long-term? Yes. and save. I forgot to point out that there are 2 questions that I skipped. Notice how it says path only and path only. Only path designated outreach teams must answer these 2 questions. Everyone else, we can just skip it. If they had more than one disability type, you would just change it to a yes and fill out the additional information on that type as well, and then click Save and Exit. And now see, all 4 of our HUD verifications are green instead of red, and that's exactly what we want. The next question is, what's the highest level of education they attained? Did they get through high school? Do they have a GED? Did they receive any sort of degree? I'm going to say high school diploma. Is this client a domestic violence victim or survivor? Answer yes or no, client doesn't know, or client refused. If you answer yes, then you must answer the 2 questions below. If yes for domestic violence victim or survivor, when did the experience occur? Within the past 3 months, 3 to 6 months ago, from 6 to 12 months ago, more than a year ago, client doesn't know, client refused. Let's say 3 to 6 months ago. And also, if you said yes for domestic violence victim or survivor, are you currently fleeing? Yes or no, client doesn't know, client refuse. And finally, you have veterans information. This is an optional feature that we threw into the outreach assessment because some outreach teams really like to gather this information. So if your client was a veteran, and I said that my client was not, but if they were, you could add in this additional veteran information. So I'm going to briefly show you what this looks like and how to answer the questions. The first 2 questions are, when did they enter military service and when did they separate from military service? The exact day doesn't matter, but you should have the month and year that they entered service and they left service. This is not their entry date into outreach. This is the actual entry date into the military. If they have more than one, you choose the one that ran the longest. And then you document, were they present in any of the following theaters of operation? It doesn't mean that they were in the line of fire. It just means they were present geographically to this particular theater of operation. So World War II, yes or no. Korean War, yes or no. Vietnam War, yes or no. And you have to answer all of these yes or no. Don't leave them blank. Say yes or no to every single one of them. And then, of course, there's the other operation if they were in an operation that is not on this list. Then what branch of the military were they in? And what was their discharge status? Then you would save and be done. But I'm just going to cancel because my client is not a veteran. Okay, look, and now I'm at the bottom of my Outreach Universal Engagement Assessment. So that means I'm done. I've filled in all the engagement assessment questions. So I can save and exit. So I did one last contact and now my client has become engaged. We're going to work together. We're going to create a case plan to hopefully get them housed. At this time, you could also record a service transaction if you provided them with some kind of service. A good one would probably be case management, right? Because we sat down and we met with them and we're going to work on a plan for housing. Save and continue. The need is closed and fully met. Save and exit. The next thing I'm going to cover is AZ client notes. How to record an AZ client note. So this is if you, and not every agency is required to record AZ client notes. It's an optional feature, but many outreach teams find it extremely beneficial to document the interactions that they've had with the people that they're meeting and talk about what happened so that other members of the team know what's going on, because different members of the outreach team may engage or have interactions with the same client. So if you choose to use AZ Client Notes, I will show you how to do that. Let's go back to the Client Information side of the record, and let's go back to the Client Profile tab. Most of the time, AZ Client Notes is located on the Client Profile tab, just underneath the Client Demographics section, AZ Client Notes. They are occasionally also located on the Assessment tab. See, AZ Client Notes. If you have it located in both places, which many agencies do, you can record your client notes on either location. It's the same sub-assessment. No matter where you record it, they will still show. So you find AZ Client Notes, and we're going to add a note. So click Add. The date seen. I'm in backdate mode to the date I seen my client, so I don't need to change anything. Then you should fill in the name of the staff member documenting the note, and this is your name as the case manager. So I would type in my name as the case manager. Please note that it's very important that you type your name the same way every single time you write a note. This is for reporting purposes. So please decide how you're going to record your name, and make sure you put your full name. Don't just put your first name, put your full first name and last name, and do it the same way every time. It's even case sensitive. If you capitalize every time. Then we have number of adults seen. This is optional. Number of children seen, optional. Number of minutes. This should really be filled in. So I'm going to say I sat down and we talked and we decided to create a case plan. And so it took about an hour. So I'm going to say we met for 60 minutes. When you're documenting minutes for an AZ Client Note, be sure to use 15-minute increments. This makes reporting much easier. So if you only talked with the client for 8 minutes, please put 15. If you talked with a client for 52 minutes, go ahead and put 60. Round up to the nearest 15-minute increment. Type of client contact, this is optional. Type of case note, this you should fill in. So what kind of case note was it? Most of the time we say case management, but there are other options. It could be you're discharging them. It could be a follow-up. It could be during a group session. It could be your intake note. So you can choose any of these that seem appropriate. Then the location is optional. And then finally, here is the body of your case note. Here is where you're going to type in your case note or what interactions you had with your client during this engagement. There is spell check in HMIS, so you can right click and do spell check. Do not ever use end date in a client note, and then you can click save and your note is saved. You can add as many client notes as you want to a client record under AZ Client Notes. Like you've seen, there are many fields that aren't necessarily required. These are the date, name of the person documenting the note, number of minutes, type of note, and the case note itself. Okay, the last thing I'm going to show you today is how to exit your client from the outreach project. Quickly, before we get into that, I just want to point out that sometimes before exit, the client's status may change, such as we entered our client with no income and maybe their income changed. The client had a disability, so maybe you assisted them to receive their disability benefits. So you should update the record whenever that happens before exit. You go to the Entry Exit tab and you create an interim and you update their income. The instructions on how to do that in HMIS are in HMIS 103 class. So be sure and sign up for that as well. All right, so to create an exit, first of all, I have to determine when did my client leave. So some of the reasons why you would do an exit is either they became housed or they disappeared for at least 6 months. Those are the two reasons you should exit someone from HMIS. Don't worry if someone disappears and you exited them and then they suddenly show up a week later. You would just create a new entry at that next engagement and you would start over again with your contacts and such. And their data will fill in from their previous interaction with you, so it's not too bad. So let's say our client, let's be positive today though, and I'm going to say our client became housed. So I'm going to change my back date to a different day, and I'm going to say on June 3rd, they moved into housing, and now I need to exit them from my outreach project. You should always exit a client from outreach as soon as they are housed. Some agencies have additional projects they enter their clients into, some kind of supportive only project, for if they continue to support that client after they're housed. But the outreach project should definitely receive an exit date. So you look up your client in the system, you go to the Entry Exit tab, you find their line of entry into your project, and you go to the exit date, which is blank because they're current, and you click on the Edit Exit pencil icon to start the exit process. This opens your Edit Exit data screen. Ensure that the exit date is correct. If this is not the date that they exited and moved into housing, then you should cancel and get into backdate mode. Now I'm going to show you what to do, how to exit someone if they disappear. The reason for leaving is going to be unknown disappeared, and their destination will be back where they came from, so usually a place not meant for habitation. Try not to use no exit interview completed if you can avoid it. This is the same as saying the data is missing that you didn't even try to find out. If they disappeared on you, just exit them back to the place where they came from, which is usually a place not meant for habitation. But we're going to say that our client became housed. So some of the reasons for leaving are a completed program, criminal activity or violence, death, disagreement with rules or persons, diverted from homeless services, and this is usually only used by coordinated entry systems. Left for housing opportunity before completing program, needs could not be met, non-compliance with program, non-payment of rent, other, reached maximum time allowed, and unknown disappeared. If you choose other, be sure to specify the other in the text field below. We're going to say they completed the program. And then you have destination. The list of destination options is very similar to the list of prior residence options, so I'm not going to read all of these again. I'm just going to point out the differences. Obviously, we have deceased in case our client passed away. We have moved from one HOPWA funded project to a HOPWA permanent housing, or moved from one HOPWA funded project to a HOPWA transitional housing. And then we have no exit interview completed, which I said you should avoid using this if at all possible. They've also added staying or living with family, either permanent or temporary. So is it a permanent tenure or a temporary tenure? There's no actual HUD guidance on what this means, so we suggest that permanent would be they could live there for 2 or more years, and temporary would be less than 2 years. So I'm going to say my client got into rapid rehousing. So that would be rental by client with a housing subsidy. Then click Save and Continue. And the Universal Exit Assessment will default, and you're given one last chance to update the client's record as they're exiting your project. If there are no updates to make, just scroll to the bottom and click Save and Exit, and now they have an exit date. Okay, that completes Outreach 301 class. So let's go over a summary of what we covered today so that you do well on your quiz. Number 1, to add an engagement date to the client record, use Interim Update on the Entry Exit tab. Enter one last contact date on the Outreach Universal Contact Assessment, and then switch to the Outreach Universal Engagement Assessment and enter the engagement date. Do not enter any more contacts after the engagement date. Further interactions with clients will just be documented through services and/or AZ client notes. Once an engagement date is entered, outreach teams are held to the Continuum data quality standards. All of the universal and program or engagement data elements must be completed at this stage. Number 4, on the Outreach Universal Engagement Assessment, both the universal data elements and program data elements can be updated. Number 5, if a client enters with no income, put a 0 in the total monthly income text field. Number 6, remember all federal partners, such as ESG for some outreach projects, must use the HUD verification workflow in HMIS. Number 7, in the state of Arizona, access is considered Medicaid in HMIS. Number 8, the client should be exited from the outreach project either when they become housed or they disappear for at least 6 months. And number 9, when creating an exit, be sure to go through the Entry/Exit tab and use the Edit Exit pencil icon to exit your client from your project. You've now completed Outreach 301 training. Please keep in mind if you have any questions, you can contact us at the HMIS Help Desk via email at hmisupport@cir.org or by phone or text at 602-908-3605. Thank you, and please refer back to your training confirmation email for further instructions.